Attention Caribbean authors and creators, are you looking to elevate your literary journey? This is Kevin George, your host and presenter from TLC Tropical Literature Creatives, and I'm thrilled to share an exciting opportunity with you, introducing our bespoke promotional services designed exclusively for authors of Caribbean heritage. Whether you're a seasoned professional or a rising star, we're here to amplify your voice. From getting the word out about your book launch, your self-publishing services, or workshops, to sharing services that you offer to fellow authors and creatives. Visit our website or reach out to us today to explore how we can tailor our expertise to showcase your literary brilliance. Let's unlock the next chapter of success together. Greetings, listenership. Welcome to TLC, Tropical Literature Creatives, the program where we interview Caribbean authors and creatives about themselves and about their literary works. Today we have with us the kingly Keon Francis, author, director, as well as a plethora of other titles. Keon, welcome to Tropical Literature Creatives.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And I love that kingly introduction. It reminds me of when I was in secondary school doing drama. And I was asked to describe myself, what adjective beginning with your name, with the letter of your name. So I was always Kingly Keon.
Look at that, man. It just seems to work. It just seems to work out. It just seems to work out.
It don't have much things with K, right? So
no, you would be surprised, but I mean, I like how Kingly works for you because it seems fitting. It seems fitting. Well, I mean, as you hear on the program, what we usually ask all the persons who we host, seeing that you're from Trinidad, I'd like to give you this scenario. Imagine we encounter each other at the airport. I'm coming to Trinidad for the first time. What would you recommend that I try when I come to Trinidad and Tobago?
Oh, that you try. Okay. I guess it will depend on what time of the year you come. You know, as a cultural practitioner, administrator, I'm big on the culture of Trinidad and Tobago, and we have a lot. Yeah, so depending on when you come, you know, checking out festivals like Diwali, Pagua, those type of things. You know, of course, we know Carnival. Of course, not that you're shade on Carnival, but we know Carnival. But aside from Carnival, you know, we have a lot of wonderful festivals that are beautiful, not only to participate in, but to learn and understand different cultures and those type of things. You know, we also, of course, I would tell anybody, try to make it to the Caroni Bird Sanctuary. The imagery is beautiful. It's a wonderful experience. Take her to the Caroni Bird Sanctuary. And of course, you know, cut up maracas. You know, the maracas on the North Coast is also beautiful. From Blanchisseuse, come right down to Maracas. And there's a new lookout that the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and the Arts built in Paraman.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you're going to Maracas, you can take a drive up to that lookout. Ooh, the views from there are amazing.
Okay. I mean, Trinidad has plenty, man. I mean, I'm here and I'm thinking I want to check some of these places out.
Yeah, we do.
Okay. Well, let's tell me a bit about yourself. Not the stuff that you find on LinkedIn, on Facebook. You know, a little bit about Keon.
I don't know, you know. Basically, the type of things you might find on Facebook is the type of things about Keon, you know. I like to cook. I love to cook because I love to eat. You know, so I spend a lot of time cooking, and in my household, I'm basically chief chef. Everybody else just want to put a hand in the pot and thing once I'm around. You know, I'm into fitness and health. You know, I'm all about trying to live as long as possible. So I try to maintain a healthy lifestyle, exercise regular. You know, as a matter of fact, as we speak, if you're looking at my background, I was from a walk that I did this morning up in Chaguaramas.
Okay.
Yeah, I went to Macrip. I went to Macrip Bay. We went and park on Macrip, walk all the way out to the main road, and then all the way back 7 miles. Took us about 2 hours. Lots of fun. If you're in Trinidad, take that walk down the golf course early in the morning. It's nice. Yeah. 2 hours, 2 hours, 10 minutes, depending on how fast you're walking. Yeah, but it was nice. You know, other than that, you know, I love the arts, I love culture. That's basically it, you know. What you might see on LinkedIn, other than that, I have a thirst for knowledge. I like to know things, I like to understand things. So I'm a very curious person. So you
Ah,
find I may not be able to tell you what happened to me 5, 10 years ago if there's some incident with my very good friends, but I could recall random facts or information from internet videos, kind of thing, you know. So yeah,
I
that's
mean, no, once it works for you, once it works for you.
well, yeah. That comes from being an avid reader. I read a lot as a child.
Ah,
Read
okay.
a lot. So I'm very curious, love reading, love learning new things, understanding things about society, about the world, you know.
Oh,
Yeah.
if you don't mind me asking, what kind of books were you into when you were younger?
Um, fantasy.
Okay, okay.
Fantasy. I was really into fantasy, but to be quite honest, my mother had a pretty extensive, not an extensive library, but she had a fairly big library. So I read nearly any and everything. So it was my mother, so definitely a lot of Mills and Boone and Daniel Steele.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Hey,
yeah.
if you know, you know. If you know, you know.
If you know, you know.
Mhm.
Right? So a lot of those. But I also read a lot of the classics because she invested in a lot of the classics. So by the time I was 13, 14, I would have read um Little Woman. I'm also not sure if many people know that Little Woman is a series, probably one of the earliest series. It's the first in a series.
First, I did
Yeah,
not. Yes.
4 books. Yeah. Little Woman, Good Wives, Little Men, and Joe's Boys. They
What?
are all with the same family or
Mm-hmm.
parts of the family from the little girls and little women go straight down to when they are adults. So I'm not sure a lot of people knew that, but my mother had Little Woman and Little Men.
Mm-hmm.
And when
Mm-hmm.
I read Little Woman and then Little Men, I was like, wait, it's the same story.
My goodness.
And I was like, but there's a part missing here. And I did research and I found Good Wives, which my mother also had, as a matter of fact, and Joe's Boys, which I went hunting for later.
Ah.
Um, so yeah, I would have read that's actually one of my favorite stories.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of my
Mm-hmm.
favorite that series is one of my favorite books of all time. Like it's one of the few that up to today I will sit down and I recently read over the entire series. By audiobook, I listened to the whole thing. Little Woman straight down to Joe's Boys again. I love this series.
Uh,
What Katie did, and what Katie did next, because apparently Katie did other things that some people don't realize as well.
yeah.
David Copperfield, Heidi, Pride and Prejudice, Tom Sawyer, Huckleberry Finn,
Mm-hmm.
Treasure Island, Tom Brown's School Days. Yeah, those are the type of books that I really grew up on until I started to go to the library. And then I branched off, read a lot of thrillers, crime novels, John Grisham.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and but fantasy. I always had a love for fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and of course that's how I ended up writing a fantasy novel.
Okay.
Um, yeah.
Okay, well, that leads me to my next question. A book that you would have written in, and the book in question that I'll be interviewing about in particular is Children of the Eternal Mother. And you say it's a
Mm-hmm.
fantasy novel. Can you just
Yeah.
give us a bit of information about it? Not too much, because we still have to go and buy the book, but just enough that we want to know what it is that we
Yeah.
out there.
Well, I usually tell this story from two sides. So it's a Caribbean epic fantasy novel, right? It's
Right,
for new
right.
adults.
Mm-hmm.
It tells the intertwining story of these two young people who have to overcome their own biases and ignorance in order to try to save their land from an enemy that has returned.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, they have to claim the power of their enemy in order for them to save the people.
Okay.
Right? And as you know, well, inherent in that is conflict. So have to claim the power of the person who you hate or the person trying to destroy you. You know, that's a conflict within itself. Um, and that's the book. That's the literary side of it.
Mm-hmm.
For us as Trinbagonians and Caribbean people, what it is that to tell the story, I utilize the folk and carnival traditions and characters of Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean to
Mm-hmm.
weave this story, right? And I think that's significant because of what I said, growing up reading fantasy. And the
Mm-hmm.
fantasy that I read a lot of times was European, of course.
Okay.
So I read a lot about elves and trolls and orcs and those type of things.
Ah,
But
okay.
then as I got older and I got into the Prime Minister's Best Village competition, and
Mm-hmm.
I started to really learn and get exposed to folk characters, and then later on carnival characters when I started my degree at the University of the West Indies in theatre and
Mm-hmm.
carnival studies. I was like, wow, these are so many, we have so many rich forms, these characters, they're rich, and the same type of characters, there's this magic about them. It's
Mm-hmm.
just
Mm-hmm.
like elves and orcs and those type of things. Why weren't there books that tell stories the way I read stories using these characters? Now you'll get a little folk character story, that type of thing,
Mm-hmm.
but not the way that you take a tale and you weave an entire novel and use the characters. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I decided that's something that I want to do because I didn't have it. And I felt the loss of it in my life. Like I tell people up to the other day, and probably still even now, I read white. I
Ah,
read white.
okay.
So I could be reading a book that has definite black characters. Like it's stated that these characters are black and
Mm-hmm.
they're written to be black. And I find myself seeing them with blonde hair and blue eyes.
I mean, it's been happening for so long. I mean, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because
Yeah.
that's what you're exposed to. That's what I've read for so very long. That's what I see on television and film, movie a lot of times, So that
Mm-hmm.
aspect of not seeing yourself in literature,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I felt that there's room for that, yeah, and we needed more of that. And that's what made me decide to write these stories. So I think one of the key things for me speaking to Caribbean people is that in this novel is fantasy, but
Mm-hmm.
it's your fantasy. You see yourself, and you should see things that you can connect to and you can understand. Yeah.
Okay.
So when I talk about wild meat and I talk about things like lap, cool, or that type of thing,
Mm-hmm.
or when I talk about flamboyant and poetries, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So when I talk about sucking your teeth and strips and just those type of little things, the things that make us us, not just the big cultural forms, but the little things, ways that we do ways that we do things. The simple
Mm-hmm.
fact we may be talking to some as Caribbean people and my bust a cutter on somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
know, there are
Mm-hmm.
very, very Caribbean things that we do that are unique to us. And this book tries to bring a lot of that into the novel.
No, and I really like that you said that because that's one of the joys that I've come across by interviewing authors like yourself, the
Mm-hmm.
desire to for persons, readers like myself, when it is that we go into our book, be able to identify ourselves with the characters who are there. Just like you said, all the nuances, the stoops, the cut eye,
Yeah,
you know what, we know these things. So when I go in, I'm like, okay, I know this, I've done this, so I
yeah,
see what it feels like to be the recipient of a cut eye or to be the giver of a cut eye as well. So
right,
no, I've been there, and I appreciate that aspect of it.
right.
I mean, I mean, in terms of the book, I mean, is this your first book, or have you had like experience writing any other books?
No, well, this is my first book. This is my first novel.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
I would have written plays before. All
Ah.
right. So yeah, through Best Village, I was a playwright. I wrote a number of plays for Best Village.
Mm-hmm.
Working with my group, at that time, Cartel Youth Creations, big up Cartel. Right? So we did a lot of work, and they helped me in my experience and my desire to interrogate cultural forms and traditional forms, which developed into this book. One of the plays that I wrote, the uniting of the Tales of Nicaval, the uniting of Dinadrat. Yeah. That's the basis for this book. So it was really my first attempt at, because that was a medium I was using a lot at the time, I decided, you know what, I want to put this in a play. I want to see these characters, but I want to see them in a world of their own. Not our world, not people playing these characters, a world where Amoko Jambi is Amoko Jambi because it's Amoko Jambi, and whatever characteristics of that Moko Jambi, where a Blue Devil is a Blue Devil, and it has a story as a Blue Devil, So I utilized Dragon Mass, which is one of the traditional masquerades that we have in Trinidad, right? The Dragon Band, that has a multitude of different characters. I utilized Blue Devil, and then I also leaned on some of the folk Moko Jambi, Papa Bois, that type of thing, Laja Bless. And I created this world where they are people. Yeah, like any other, with their own trials, tribulations, goals, ambitions, that type of thing. Just, it's magic.
No.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. I mean, you touched on one of the things that you're a playwright. And when I was doing some research, I saw that one of the titles given to you is director. And that just had me curious. I mean, seeing that the book is a fantasy novel, etc. What would your thoughts be if, let's say, for example, Netflix tried to say, you know what, here's what, we like this book, we like its feel, we think we want to adapt this into a movie or maybe even a series because of the characters that are in there. How would you receive something like that?
Yeah. No, I'll be thrilled. I think that's actually the next step that I might want to go with the book and the series, because I wrote it as a standalone novel, because I hate when books end like totally on cliffhangers and leave you waiting 3-4 years to get the rest of the story. I hate it. I love it, but I hate it, I prefer, so what I tried to do was yes, it's part of a bigger story, but you should be able to read the book and feel satisfied that I tied all of the loose ends and the knots, the major loose ends that I had, I tied them up at the end of this book in a nice little bow for you. So you could say, okay, I finished this story. It's a nice story. I know it have more here, but I'm not gonna try to hunt the author down and hang him until he writes another book. So that was really important. But it really is a part of possibly a 4 to 5 book series.
Okay.
That will explore these characters and more going forward. Right. I go talk too much about where this story looking to go.
Okay. Spoilers.
But yeah, no spoilers. But I'm expecting to build on the characters and carry it forward. So, but it was I always had in mind the possibility of adapting it into film. Yeah, some sort of film. And afterwards, I've realized because of that, and I guess because of the nature of the story was taken from a play and adapted into a novel, with consideration somewhere in the back of my mind of adapting it into like a film or series, it's very kind of episodic. So there are very clear places in there that you can stop and deal with these 2 chapters alone as a episode of like a series or something. There's and then you can, there's natural spaces in the movement of it that allows for that. And I think part of it as well is because of my desire to balance the action with the literary side of things. I like pace. I love action. I like reading a book, you know, and because that's what fantasy is, right? The magic and the fighting and the use of magic and the learning how to solve problems with the tools at your disposal and all of that. That's the fun in it, you know. But there's also the development of it and the characters and watching the characters build and grow and seeing them move, you know, from one person into another person. Yeah, seeing them grow and blossom. So because of that, the writing is kind of very action. I still, as much as I develop the characters and you tell the story, you know, I always wanted to feel like if it moving. So by the time you get into the story after the second or third chapter, it just kind of keeps moving. And I think that gives it a nice essence for that could be converted into film or even possibly like animation.
Ah, okay. We have options, man. Options.
Yeah. I think so. I think so.
Okay.
That thought would really be for me, like, so if I were to try to push the project myself, there's a question I'm asking with resources. What would I prefer? Would I prefer to try to do animation or would I prefer live action? Now we've gotten a long way in terms of how look and feel of like live action. But to do something like fantasy requires a pretty big budget for those visual effects and stuff, which we don't necessarily have the capacity for just quite yet in Trinidad, right? Or in the Caribbean. So we do, however, have excellent animators. Yeah, and animation allows you different, you know, a different that kind of freedom as well.
Yes, it does.
But animation takes really long. It takes a long time to develop, to draw, and create the animation. So yeah.
I guess you have to weigh options for that.
Yeah, when the time comes. But I mean, if somebody like Netflix jump up and say, well, yeah, let's do it, like, sure, let's do this.
I mean, for the book itself, I mean, how long did it take you to put this book together? Like from conception, print?
From conception, this book was conceptualized. The book itself, the story was conceptualized in 2006.
Oh.
Yeah.
And it was launched this year, 2023?
Yeah, 2023. Yeah, so the story that the initial play, the idea, the spark, the seed started in 2006. I started actively writing a novel in 2010.
Okay.
I knew that I wanted to write a novel. I knew I wanted to write, hopefully, a good novel. And for me, that meant learning how to write. Understanding how to write and what writing really entails. So I studied while I was doing my degree, University of West Indies, St. Augustine, alumni. Hey, I really big enough people, right? When I was there, I did a short course, one of the courses in writing. And then I decided, okay, I'm going to do my master's in creative writing. So I participated in the Cropper residential workshop for writers. I applied for that and I got through with that in 2010. And from then I said, you know what, yeah, I'm going to do the master's. So I did a master's in universities in creative writing. So that was where the bulk of the process in terms of creating the work came from, which then developed and built going down the road. Just tweaking, because a lot of the work, what people don't realize is almost writing the book or writing a book is the easiest thing. The editing, the crafting of it is what is the hardest part. When you go into it and you almost take a file and you fine tune each word, each sentence, each paragraph. Is this what I want to say? Do I want to do this? Do I want it to sound like that? I reach later in the story and like, oh, I didn't quite connect this. So you have to go back and connect the dots, and that's where the time and the effort and the real work and crafting a story comes in.
Oh, okay. Okay. And it did take quite some time. So,
yeah.
And so the result that we're seeing, we know that it's a good product as a result of that. In terms of your book itself, is it self-published or did you get the assistance of like a publishing company to get this book published?
Well, I was fortunate enough to get hybrid publishing.
Okay.
So I really I really was targeting foreign publishers, right? Like it or not, the reading public in Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean is not as robust as we might like it to be. The interest isn't there. And unfortunately, and this me getting all theoretical, as a post-colonial society, some would say some might say we're still in the colonial times, but that colonial legacy means that we find a lot of times we don't celebrate us unless we become celebrated outside. So we don't do a lot of development. We don't do a lot of pushing. We don't do a lot of seeing talent and really building talent. But definitely once talent hit, we quick to claim it and say, hey, talent, we love it. And we hold on to it. So, so ideally I would have liked to try to get a foreign publisher, a foreign-based publisher, to be able to create those linkages. And also, let's be real, it's a bigger market. Yeah, the US market, the UK market, even with the diaspora, it's a lot more people to target. And as we know, locally, how many readers do we have, right? So people really interested and who will go and buy a book, furthermore, go and buy a fantasy novel, because fantasy is hard. Yeah, fantasy is hard. So I really wanted to target abroad. Sent out all the million letters and all those type of things. None of them hit. So I decided, okay, I'm going to do the self-publishing thing. That's what it is. I want to get this book out. I need to get it out. I even wrote to some of the local, when you say local publishing houses, so we have publishers that kind of deal with local content, Trinbagonians, that kind of thing. So like People Tree Press and one or two of those. Right? I even reached out to one of those and I didn't hear anything back. So I was like, again, it's fantasy, and I'm vexed with them. Fantasy hard, because they have a small reading market, and then it's even smaller for something like fantasy. Yeah, unless it's well marketed and people see that real value in it. So I decided to go self-publishing, and just before I got in exploring self-publishing options, I found Trinity Hills Publishing, who at the time were facilitators for self-publishing. By the time I got to them, however, they were starting to shift the way in which the company operates to more hybrid publishing. So for those who don't know, hybrid publishing is where self-publishing, you pay your entire way. You pay for everything. Traditional publishing, they pay you, right? And they make, because they think they could sell your book. And so they pay you upfront for the rights to be able to try to sell your book. And once they make back their money, you continue to earn money from your book, right? Hybrid publishing is somewhere in between. So you pay a much smaller fee, right? And the publisher takes your book on and facilitates the publishing. So a lot of the formatting, marketing, some distribution, because they have links with distributors in the US and that type of thing. Facilitate royalties, facilitate putting it on Amazon, doing, the ebook and that type of thing. So a lot of the things that you as a writer have to figure out and try to understand and kind of learn trial by error. They already know. So they facilitate that, but at a much lower cost, because what they do is there is more of a partnership. So they read your book, or they read your pitch type of thing. And they say, oh, this sounds great. This sounds like something we can sell. Yeah. So it isn't totally on the author. So you pay a smaller amount and the company takes some of that pressure off, because how they make their money is when the book sells as well.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's what I got with Trinity Hills Publishing. And I was really fortunate. Really nice people there. I must admit that, they help every step of the way. They guide, they give a lot of guidance, explain processes. And they've been really helpful. I cannot tell a lie, and especially with the package that they had at that point in time, you get a author website and they have distribution channels, so they put your book out in certain bookstores, you know, across where their company is, because they are a more foreign-based company. They're based in the US, right? So yeah, they've been awesome. That was my publishing.
Well, okay. I mean, that sounds great. I mean,
Yeah.
in terms of your book itself, because of the folklore characters that are included in it, I mean, one of the questions I had is how would you feel if it is that your book were to be adopted into like or teaching systems to help persons with their reading and their comprehension? Because here it is, you have folklore characters, because one of the things that happens in Trinidad is that a lot of persons think that, a lot of the younger generation, they're not being exposed to like folklore, etc. So how would you
Yeah.
feel about your literature, which includes folklore characters, being used to help persons with their reading and their comprehension?
Well, I would love that. I would love that. As I said, I grew up loving fantasy, and I think fantasy has its own draw type of thing. And I think any opportunity for us to learn more about ourselves should be taken. And people learn differently and experience differently. So a lot of people may not have any kind of idea about these characters and carnival characters. Just, you come and you give a lecture or see it in a book, or, just a random character in a book, or seeing it pass on the road, but they might be interested in reading a novel, especially if you have to read it for school, which could then be, of course, tied into other aspects of the curriculum. I taught for a short while, for about a year, in St. Stephen's College. So I know that what they try to do is they try to link the different disciplines, different areas. So a book like this does provide the opportunity for, while you're reading the book in literature, you're learning about the characters for English and for the VAPA program, and you're doing practical things like looking at possibly the dance steps for the different characters, or looking at the costuming and how they are drawn, and how the costumes are made for art, or the speeches that they give, how they speak. They're the essence of the character in theater. So there are the opportunities for those linkages and that type of thing there. So
Okay.
I'll be ecstatic if they decided that.
Okay, great. All right, folks, just bear with us as we take a short break before we turn to the interview with the kingly Keon Francis. Welcome back, listeners, to TLC Tropical Literature Creatives. After that short break, we're back here with the kingly Keon Francis. Now, Keon, before you were talking about your experience with publishing, I'm just curious, how was your experience where the marketing aspect was concerned? I had to ask that question because what I'm coming to is that authors, they seem to wear a lot of hats, and one of the hats that they seem to put on is marketing, as a lot of them have to market their own material. Was this the case with you?
Well, yes, I have to market it. You have to do the marketing. At the end of the day, yes, you are an author, but you have to think of yourself as an entrepreneur, right? You're in the business of selling a book. Yeah. Unless you're with a traditional publisher who will take all of those things on board, then yes, you have to do marketing. And even if you are with a traditional publisher, the way that the industry, as a matter of fact, the way that the world has gone is that social media and a person's online presence is critical to their success in almost any endeavor. So as an artist on the whole, right, trying to find any measure of success, one of the things that you have to be prepared to do is to market yourself, get yourself out there, get your product out there, do things like this, interviews, with social media, those type of things. It's critical. You have to do it at this point in time. That's the nature of the world right now.
Okay. I mean, in terms of your book, I mean, it's really interesting. If it is I wanted to get a copy for myself or for someone, what channels could I use to get a copy of your book?
So currently it's on Amazon, right? You can purchase a paperback or ebook. And in Trinidad and Tobago, you can get it at Metropolitan Bookstore on Arpita Avenue, paper-based in Normandy Hotel, the Blue Edition in Tunapuna, as well as you can get it at the San Fernando Creative Arts Center in San Fernando.
Okay.
I'm still in talks with one or two bookstores to see if I can get it in one of the major bookstores as well.
Okay, okay. I mean, what advice would you give to someone who wanted to do what it is that you did in terms of write a book of this nature? Because obviously it doesn't sound easy, but at the same time, you've done it, so it's possible. So what advice would you give?
When you say of this nature, you mean fantasy, or do you mean a book about, utilizing our culture kind of thing? Because it
Actually,
might
actually both, both.
both.
It's
Like
authors and not many have a genre that is fantasy, but
yeah.
yeah, so you kind of stand out.
So what I would say is, one, make sure that you're familiar with your topic. Yeah, you have to be familiar with it. You have to do that research. Yeah, to really understand the topic that you're dealing with and engaging with. Yeah. That's one of the first things. The second thing is read. Read. I cannot understate the importance of reading. And reading in your genre, reading outside of your genre, reading. Reading is what will help you. It's one of the major things that will help you understand the format. It does so much to help you understand how to structure a story, what works, what doesn't work, you know? Reading is a lot of that. Generally, for writing, I will say take feedback. Feedback is critical. And at some point in time, you need to divorce yourself from the work. I know it's your baby, it's your child, it's, you spend so much time, and it's a story that you want to give. You want to see it there, take root, but you have to be able to divorce yourself from it. You have to be able to take critical feedback. Yeah, so beta readers, reading groups are very important. Like when I did Cropper and I did my master's, having people who were able to read and critique. Yeah. And it doesn't all have to be people who know writing or literature, that type of thing. Yeah. It's simply a matter of people who are willing to explain to you and tell you if they have a problem and why. That's what helps craft, as I said earlier, in terms of crafting the work, the crafting of any work is really the most important part of it. And that helps a lot with the crafting. When you are sitting with a book for 4 or 5 years, 2, 3 months, however long, you miss things. There are things that you don't see. So having people read that work and be able to point out, oh, this didn't make sense, or why you do this, why you do that. Don't get upset, don't get defensive, listen to it, ask them why do they feel this way. Get to the bottom of why. Yeah. And there are a lot of people who they will say, oh, I didn't like that. And I said, but why you didn't like it? And they're like, and I think about it. That's okay. Try to tease to get to the bottom of why not. I didn't like this character. Why didn't you like the character? The character really annoying. So maybe I want the character to be annoying, So like my main character, Ruku, at a point in time, one of my friends who first read the book, she was like, he is so annoying. I'm really annoyed with him. Like, why can't he grow more of a bloody backbone and that type of thing? I was like, that's interesting. I didn't think of him as annoying, or annoying, not annoying as an annoying person, but annoying because of the things that he's doing and the way that he's treating with things is frustrating to the reader,
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I wanted that. That's not necessarily something that I don't want, because some emotional involvement with the character, that's good, right? But then I realized that I want to use that, but I also need to temper it. So that resulted in me writing in a particular way to set the character up so that as much as he's annoying you, you still see the potential that he has, even though he doesn't see it in himself. Yeah, so it makes you connect with him as much as he's frustrating you with him differently. And that's actually how I got my first chapter. My first chapter was literally probably the last chapter I wrote in this book.
Okay.
Chapter. Yeah.
Interesting.
So Yeah. So things like that, you know. It's where the persons who be a beta readers, people who read and give feedback and could tell you, this is why I thought this worked for me, this didn't work for me. I'm not sure why I do this, I'm not sure why I did that. That helps a lot, especially with something like fantasy, which requires a lot of world building, a lot of threads, a lot of,
Yeah.
weaving.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it
Yeah.
helps.
No.
Another thing that helps is keeping track of how you when you move, how you develop characters, the relationships between characters. Something like this that is a sweeping fantasy across our entire country. How to keep track of people and timelines and where they're moving and that type of thing. And shameless plug, I found World Anvil.
Well done.
Right? World Anvil. It's a platform used, I believe, primarily by gamers, people who, make
Ah,
those fantasy games.
ah,
Right, they use it.
right.
But particularly the free version, I've only used the free version thus far. I
Hmm.
haven't used it for this novel, but there's another novel that I started working on and I found it and I started to use the platform, and it's really good at allowing you
Yeah,
to
yeah,
keep track of your characters, to build family trees, to build background content, and all of the things that work lead into a work. Because
yeah,
especially with
yeah,
fantasy, it's basically an iceberg, right?
yeah.
So they say with the iceberg, you see the iceberg on top of the water, but for this much under the water, there's like all of this under the water,
Yes, yes,
right?
yes, yes,
That's
yes.
fantasy because you need to create this entire world and do so much that never really gets to the book. It never gets into the book, but it influences the book so that someone who reads the book feels that there's more in this world, and it gives just these little details at times. Like in my novel, there's a currency, and I had to create the currency and I have a whole long listing of this currency that
Yeah.
that is pearls, right? And I broke down each type of pearl that I want to have and how much equivalent it is in TT dollars, and therefore that means you have this much spending power, etc., etc. I did a whole sheet just for money, and I reference it probably twice in the whole novel, right? But
Mhm.
being able to mention it properly, and for it to come from a space of a foundational space helps the reader to understand and feel that they're more in the world, you know,
Mhm.
and feel that consistency. Because when I say quem now and quem later, I mean the same thing. So once you get what a quem is, then you're like, oh, okay, that's what he means.
Mhm. Mhm.
That kind of way. So yeah, I think for anyone getting into the writing, those are the type of things that you need to look at.
Okay, okay. I mean, that's a lot, and it's really interesting how it is that you used something that someone might think is unrelated as a technique to build your
Yeah.
characters and to keep track of them. So that is very creative. I'll have to give you
Yeah.
credit for that. Okay. Well, that pretty much brings us to the end of our interview at this time. Thank you very much for your time, Keon. Thank you for everything that you have shared with us because through listening to this interview, I do think that we would have left a lot more informed and a lot more entertained and a lot more comfortable having been introduced to you. So, in terms of the rest of the books that you're working on, we look forward to them. And when it is that they do come out, don't be a stranger. We look forward to interviewing you about your literary works, Keon.
No problem. Thank you very much for having me. All the best to you and your viewers.
Okay. Thank you, Keon. And you take care.
Take care.
You've been listening to TLC, Tropical Literature Creators. If you've heard something of interest or something you like, reach out to us. Reach out to our authors. Follow us on social media. We look forward to hearing from you.